Hey guys, 2021, we're here in the new year and we're talking about what your plan is for moving forward in 2021 on the Chris Miles Money Minute, the side section here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. And we've got Chris Miles with us. Chris, thanks for being on the show, man.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, Kyle.
All right, so before we jump into this, make sure if you haven't already, go to fearlesskyle.com/Chris Miles. First of all, you're going to see every single episode we've ever had with Chris, getting inside the mind of one of the best investors here in our era today. And we also have a chance for you to be able to connect with Chris. How about that? So you just fill out the form that's right there on that page. Again, fearlesskyle.com/Chris Miles, and you can have a 15-minute free consultation with Chris. He's going to look at your financial situation. He's going to help you to be able to get to retirement earlier. He's going to be able to take your passions, turn them into money-making machines that will help you spend more time with your family and do the things that you love. So one thing that we are excited to talk about today, and it's kind of the Warren Buffett thing, right? It's like, hey, if everyone's doing it, don't do it. If no one's doing it, you might want to take a real deep look at that. And to me, we're some of the crazies out there. I'm the Airbnb guy, and people are like, why are you doing Airbnb? That's ridiculous. And you're the infinite banking and real estate and whole life insurance. People are like, why are you doing that and not doing 401ks? And so there's two things we want to talk about today: the mindset of that, and also what are we doing and why do we see value in those things? So, Chris, just kind of tell me a little bit as we start here. Where did that mindset come for you? Is there like a day in the life of Chris Miles where it was just like, oh my gosh, I need to stop doing what everyone else is doing?
There was a day and a moment, but it was a transition too, right?
Okay.
So I used to be the mainstream financial advisor before becoming the anti-financial advisor, right?
Right.
I did that for about 4 years. But I like evidence. I like proof. And I remember I was running numbers, right? And I was like, well, what would happen if I gave the real rate of return of the stock market, which is only about 7.5 to 8%, right? That's if you get those returns. That's before fees come out. So you're lucky to make 6 or 7% in the stock market. That's the real return. I took those numbers, started putting plugging those in over time, right? And then I said, well, what's a real rate of inflation? I was told it's like 2 or 3%. Well, no, it's not. The government lies so they can pay you less money in Social Security. So no, it's more like 5, 7+% a year.
Crazy.
Now, if you think about it, if inflation is like, say, 6% a year, you're earning 6% a year. Basically, whatever you're saving is not doing anything. You're not making any money, right?
Yep.
And it started to create an issue. And I remember this was the kind of defining moment. It was December of 2015. I went back home to Oregon to see my dad. He says, Chris, you've been an advisor for 4 years. Advise me, right? So he actually was willing to listen. And he was debt free. He had no debt. His home was paid off. He had, a few $100,000 in his 401k. His Y2K hit. That didn't help, right? So it's starting to build its way back up. This is 2005, right? And he's just like, so Chris, how am I going to retire? And I said, well, based on what the number of money you have, if you want to retire now, hopefully you die in 5 years because you will run out of money.
Ooh, yikes.
He's like, well, that's not a good option. Give me something else. And he's like, is there anything I do? I was like, well, you can cash out money from your house. And that would seem crazy to me. But I'm like, your house is an asset. You can cash money out of that, maybe get money from there. And back then when you got money out, it was like 5, 6% if you're lucky, right? And he's like, okay, well, where do I invest it that I get at least that much? I'm like, I don't know. I can't guarantee anything because the market can't guarantee. And even the fixed, indexed products like indexed annuities and indexed universal life, I was like, even there, I can't guarantee it. And I realized I couldn't give him a good answer. Well, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right?
Right.
A few weeks later, I'm talking to my friend that actually trained to be an advisor. He left to do real estate investing. And he starts telling me that him and his dad, after 4 months, doubled his income as a professor at the local university.
Wow.
And I was like, that's too good to be true, right?
Yeah.
Right. You're probably gambling right now, or that's just a lie. And he finally just stopped me. He's like, well, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free?
Ooh.
None. Even after decades of advice, Chris, I'm like, no. Like even when the old advisors I inherited from advisors retiring, the advisors retired, but my clients haven't,
Yeah. Well, and that's a good question to even ask your advisor. Like, hey, do you have the chance to retire right now? And if
could
not,
they
then,
retire off their investments in mutual funds? And they can't. I guarantee they cannot, right? They can maybe they can retire off the commissions, but not off of the actual investments.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, is that it's 100% chance of failure investing in the 401ks with a max funding it. You will guarantee lose. You will lose if you do IRAs. You will lose if you do whole life, even if you just do that by itself. That won't get you there. The only way you have a shot is doing alternative investments. But that's crazy to people. They're like, oh, that sounds risky. Oh, I heard real estate. Remember it's their last recession? That was bad. Lots of people lost money. I'm like, yeah, a lot of them were doing things like I did in the last recession where I gambled with my
Yep.
real estate instead of cash flowing it, right? That's a difference. There's a huge difference.
Absolutely. So how do we get people into that mindset, or at least help them to start seeing that way? What's the key takeaways that you have, or that you can give to our audience about just seeing things differently?
Look at evidence. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even if everybody talks about it, and you mentioned this like with Warren Buffett, right? Like if basically if everybody's, if everybody's swimming one direction, you want to go the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody's swimming in the broke, living paycheck to paycheck direction. That's not because of debt, guys. There are debt-free people. People that are my clients that are quote unquote debt-free saying, Chris, I cannot retire. I've got millions saved up and it's not enough. So understand that there are people out there quietly suffering. They're suffering in silence. They won't tell you they're suffering. They'll look like on the outside they're great. They're saying, I'm not free. And so look at the evidence, realize that one, you can only live on about 2% of your mutual funds a year. So if you want a $100,000 a year lifestyle, you better have at least $5 million in a mutual fund right now. Do the math. You cannot save that much
Yep.
to hit $5 million. The market doesn't return that well enough to do that. So when you
Nope.
look at real returns on markets and you look at real inflation too, it's hopeless to do the traditional way. You've got to
Yeah.
look different and look at evidence. Who is financially free? You probably will notice that people that you do know that actually are free, that don't usually brag about it, have real estate.
Mm-hmm.
They are actually different investors. They're not even playing the stock market. That's usually an afterthought. They usually make their money some other way, right?
Right.
And then they just play the stock market. I never find financially free people in the stock market. I used to be one of
No.
them, and I was never free.
Well, and even day traders, right? Because they're gambling.
Oh,
They have ups and downs every single day. I
they
think
have
one
to
of the
hunt for the
best.
food.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, and
Yeah.
I think one of the best examples of this, Chris, is something that we talk about all the time. Both debt and acceleration versus accumulation. People
Hmm.
who are scared of debt have an accumulation mindset. They are
That's right.
thinking, I need to save, I need to pay off. I need to do the Dave Ramsey thing, which we talk about
Yeah.
all the time. Dave Ramsey gives really good advice for people that just want to skate by, which
Hmm.
for some people, that's great. Go ahead. But I want to be financially free. And if you're listening to this podcast right now, you want to be financially free. And so Dave Ramsey's advice of accumulation and paying off debt and putting into your 401k is just going to give you barely enough dependency or independency, whatever you want to say there, to not check your bank account when you go to the grocery store. That's not
Hmm.
my goal. My goal is to be able to buy a grocery store one day. Like I want to be able to control, I want to be able to own the beach, not go to the beach. You know what I mean?
That's
And
right.
so it's this idea that most people who are wildly wealthy actually have way more debt. And a good example, I think, to talk about this, and maybe you have an example too, is, hey, are you going to pay your car payment every single month? Usually when
Mm.
you ask someone that, they're like, yeah, of course I am. Then why would you take that $8,000 that you are going to pay off your car payment with because you're scared about having that $200 a month
Hmm.
payment and
Right.
save $200 a month? Why not take the $8,000 and invest it into yourself? Start a side business that pays
Right.
you over $1,000 a month. Now you just had an
Exactly.
$800 swing by getting active and investing in yourself rather than being safe and scared and paying off debt. To
Yeah.
me, that's the most like boom,
Yeah.
eye-popping, idea that people just, if you change that mindset, now you're in a proactive, trying to accelerate versus accumulate.
The problem is that people think it's just too good to be true. Like, well, is
Yeah,
that really possible? And the truth is, like, I'm living proof of it. You're living proof of it. Like,
yeah,
we've done it. And there's nothing special about us, right? Like, you don't have to be a financial genius to do this. That's what I find out with my clients all the time, is that it really does happen to be one, you got to have the right knowledge, the right connections, the right, information, right? And the right mindset
hmm,
to make that work. It's all about cash flow. What generates income for you? Specifically, how can it be passive income?
yeah,
Learn that. And don't learn that from people that aren't doing it themselves, right? Don't do that. Learn from people that are actually doing it themselves. And that's
Exactly.
why I tell people, it's like, who are you listening to? Are you listening to that neighbor down the street who's still in the rat race themselves? They don't get it, or maybe they're gambling on Bitcoin or whatever they're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not free, they're just excited. Find people that have actually been there, done that, and doing it today.
So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to think about your answer for this by sharing my story, but I want to know the craziest thing you've ever done when it comes to investing. And my story is back in May of 2019.
Mhm.
I was so bought in with Airbnb that I said, I'm selling my house. I'm moving in with my parents. Now, I had a good reason for moving in with my parents because my dad was really declining in his health and he was about 4 months away from going into hospice. So, they needed the help. But I literally sold my house and moved in with my parents and bought two houses, started a real estate investing business, started an Airbnb business, and was up and running with two houses on Airbnb.
Mhm.
Most people were like, why are you doing that? You had a house that had all this equity and you just threw that out the window and now you're gambling on Airbnb. And no, I knew what it could produce. And here I am, 18 months later, not even, and it's a business that is allowing me to have the freedom of choice and just do so much more for my life and my future family. So it felt crazy though at the time. I will tell you, felt 100% crazy. Even though I was like, "Am I not seeing something right here? Like, why is no one else doing this?" But
Right.
it was again the Warren Buffett thing. So, what's the
Yep.
craziest thing you've done?
Man, so the craziest thing I've ever done, well, outside world, they say start a business, right? I mean,
Right.
that would be like the craziest thing is not just finish college, drop out of college, right? Which is what I did. I dropped out with one class before my bachelor's
Oh my
and
gosh.
went and became a financial advisor with commission only. So no salary, nothing, right? Now, granted, I had a job. At least I was working like 30 hours a week to keep the bills paid and things like that. But
Hmm.
that was kind of a crazy thing to do. And but here's the reason I did it is because whenever there's, most people look at, they want to have a floor, right? They want to have that support underneath them. That
Right.
salary, that wage is a floor, right?
Mm,
But whenever you get a floor, you also get a ceiling. You're
exactly. That's
capped.
good.
You're stuck.
Mm,
And I realized as I started to see the entrepreneur world, I said, you know what? I see the opportunity here where there's no floor. There's also no ceiling, and that's a scary thing for people, right? And I had to do things there, and it took me a while. Like it wasn't like overnight I was this entrepreneur success. Like I was horrible at it, especially in those first few years.
yeah.
I was not great at business because there's scarcity issues and things like that. But as I've gotten past that, even though I'm still technically a college dropout, I make way more money than people with PhDs, and it's not about how smart you are. That might have seemed crazy and risky, and there was a degree of risk, right? But I knew I was betting on myself. And that is like the surest bet I can do is if you know you can trust yourself to make it work,
Hmm.
that's what those returns pay off.
And that's so key right there. I mean, first of all, when there's a floor, there's a ceiling.
Mhm.
But the best investment, I tell anyone, if you have a net worth that is just barely scraping by, or if all you have in the bank is $30,000 to $50,000 to invest, just invest in yourself. Like now is not the time to start putting things um, into real estate and only making 6% of your own money. Like go and invest in yourself, learn how to raise that money and use
Mhm.
other people's money so that you can start getting cash flow. So it's things like that. It's that mindset. I love this talk, but we're out of time. So let's make sure that people go to fearlesskyle.com/Chris Miles. If you are tired of having that floor and ceiling and you want to have the chance to break through that ceiling and have an infinite return on investing in yourself, the best way to do that is to get to fearlesskyle.com/Chris Miles. Fill out that form and set up a talk with Chris, and he's going to talk you through what your financial plan can be. So, Chris, thanks so much again for being on the Chris Miles Money Minute. We appreciate all that you bring to help our audience to conquer the world of investing.